welcome back to the second installment of the College Huddle, everybody. I'm your host, Eric Boggs, aka the Podfather, and I am joined today by Daniel from the Gator Podcast, Gator Truth Podcast, I believe it is. Daniel, welcome to the College Huddle, man.
Oh man, thanks for having me. It's weird that I've been a part of the College Huddle for a little over a year, and first time that you and I have gotten together, but got
Yeah,
to meet lots of great people around the College Huddle. So finally get to hang out with you, Eric.
it's fantastic, and yeah, well overdue, Daniel. That's for sure. But uh, we're gonna be doing more of this, guys, and I'm dedicating some more of my time. I won't say free time because I don't have any, but I'm gonna dedicate more of my time to doing these type of videos where I collaborate with my friends over at the College Huddle because I think this community that we have built in the past year, Daniel, is worth celebrating and worth utilizing. There's a lot of great podcasters and content creators in the College Huddle, and a lot of great minds like yourself, man, who are passionate about their team, yours being the Florida Gators, and you do a tremendous job on the Gator Truth Podcast. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your podcast, and where they can find you.
Well, I mean, I've been a lifelong Gator fan. I know most of the College Huddle is full of lifelong fans of their school. Um, really just enjoy the Gators. Funny thing about the podcast is originally it was my brother's idea. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do it with you. Bought the equipment, and then he got a new job, which allowed him not to do it. But by then, you have the equipment. Why not start it up? And through that, I've gotten to just have a good time talking about the Gators, meeting tons of great people in Gator Nation, as well as many people through the College Huddle. Hopefully, I'll get Why We Huddle started up back again as we've started to focus back in on College Huddle community content. But you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever they're calling it now, at Gator Podcast. I'm currently trying to get through a rebrand because when originally I had a logo made, it was supposed to be just Gator Truth, which came up from a moniker I made up years ago. And when I couldn't think of a better name for the podcast, my brother, who was one of the ones who was going to start with me, and another friend I've had for a long time, goes to Gator games with me, goes, just Gator Truth. Just take that. I'm like, okay, fine, I will. But then when we sent off the logo, it ended up being Gator Truth, Florida Football Podcast, and that's a mouthful. So I'm trying to just get exercise down to Gator Truth and get a nice new logo to fit on our College Huddle map here soon. But
There you go. Yeah.
fingers crossed on that.
Awesome, awesome. I'm looking forward to that, and of course, we'll update the website when that comes out. So tonight's episode, guys, we're going to talk about Lee Corso. This is an interesting topic, and uh, you know, I don't know about you, Daniel, but I was a huge game day fan, especially when I was growing up. The '90s into the early aughts, I was all about game day. Not so much anymore. I think Fox does a really good job of presenting an alternative. I know the Big Ten Network, since I'm, in the Big Ten country, I watch that one sometimes from time to time. They've really upped their game, and I'm assuming the SEC Network is doing the same, maybe even the ACC Network, as long as that still lasts. But I feel like Lee Corso is game day, even maybe even more so than Kirk Herbstreit is. And I think losing and we all know that this was coming. Like the last 4 years has been kind of rough for the man. And gosh, I think what is he now? 90 years old or something close to that? Like um he's got to be pushing 90, I feel like.
Yes.
Uh 89. Yeah, he's almost there. August, he'll be 90 years old in a couple months in August. And gosh, God bless him, dude. I mean,
Yes.
he's done a tremendous job, and it's just the last couple years it's gotten kind of hard. And I kind of was one of those guys, Daniel, I don't know about you, but I kind of felt like ESPN was kind of throwing him out there a little bit, you know, too much, maybe a little bit. And on the, I won't say elder abuse, but my gosh, at times it kind of felt like it a little bit. And Sometimes I think it's hard for these guys to let go. You think of Joe Paterno. I think he coached probably about 10 years too long, to be honest. Maybe 5, somewhere right in that range. Bowden maybe even could have probably hung it up a year or two before he did. And then you think about, well, the guy who I think ESPN is hoping replaces Corso, Nick Saban. He's been on there for a year now. I think Nick Saban. I think he did the college game service by saying, you know what, I'm going while I'm still pretty high on top here, and transitioning into that game day role. So I kind of want to get your thoughts, Daniel, on that aspect right there, and then we're going to transition back to his career and just kind of talk a little bit about Corso as the man himself. But um, how do you feel about ESPN's job here? Did they do the right thing here, or do you think maybe they should have kind of maybe pushed him out a little sooner?
I'm with you. The last few years, although it's always good to see Lee Corso, it is kind of hard sometimes to watch. What I liken it to, you're talking about football coaches hanging on too long, but the example that I've actually given talking to people is Dick Clark's New Year's Eve when they used to bring Dick Clark out there in the last few years, and it's like, oh man, he probably should not be doing this at midnight in New York at this point. And but it is a good thing that we're at least have a set date. The last thing we want is not to have a final closure, goodbye, and then unfortunately something happened. You talk about Joe Pa, he's kind of forced out there at the end with all the scandals, and 2 months later, unfortunately, 3 months or whatever, he's unfortunately passes away. And we don't want to see that from Corso. I mean, you talked about growing up watching him in the 90s, 2000s, and I've got to say, same thing growing up as a kid. That was my must see TV during football season. The rest of the year can be Saturday morning cartoons or whatnot, but on Saturdays, it was College Game Day, and Lee Corso, of course, being a big part of that, being really, in a way, the the glue that held everything together. You think about even the college football, video games through the different iterations. You always had Corso's pick as like one of the big things before the game. So and I think that shows the impact of him, beyond just, hey, he's a guy on a TV show. He was a cultural and still is a cultural phenomenon for all the different ways, putting on the hats or screaming F it when he's on air. And one of the best moments, or, the heads, whatever it is, he's been game, and it's going to be sadly an end of an era, but one that I think definitely needs to have a definitive end before we have more of a sad end. So I'm really glad that we have something set up. I'm not, and before I get to that next slide, you talked about Big Ten and Fox doing a great job. Last few years, SEC Network has done a tremendous job, I believe, with their morning show. So that's also taken some of my attention, not just because Tim Tebow's on there. I'm sure some listeners or watchers will be like, oh, yeah, it's because of Tim Tebow. And
My wife would appreciate that, so it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. But I mean, it's because it's got Florida people like Laura Rutledge and, oh, why am I drawing a blank on the one before, on the reporter before her as well? It's had a lot of Florida connections.
Sure.
I'll say that. But besides that, they do a great job. And also, whereas Game Day has been big on spotlighting everything throughout the country, SEC really focuses on SEC games. And since Florida's been pretty bad in the last decade and a half, it's probably the best way to get pregame stuff for Florida, because why would Game Day care when we're having multiple losing seasons in a row? So I haven't watched quite as much of Game Day like the last year or two. I still catch it when I can. but when it has, it's been hard. But to Lee Corso, you know, it's going to be like saying goodbye to, you know, your favorite cartoon growing up, or, you know, your favorite superhero, because this is someone that you and I have seen, you know, from our developmental
Hmm.
time in the sport growing up to now we're adults, and it's just something that's been around our lives longer than it had, longer than not. And then now it's going to be an empty Saturday. As far as Nick Saban, I think he's done a great job in everything I've seen, but he's also not the personality.
Yeah, he's not nearly as charismatic.
Right. And that's something that I'm curious, and I don't mind Pat McAfee, as some people do, but that charisma is also in a different way, and I don't think in quite the great way that Lee Corso's charisma, you know, and tone brought it to college game day. So it'll be an interesting new deal. But just going back to my earlier comparison to Dick Clark's New Year's Eve, Ryan Seacrest's New Year's Eve seems to be doing well every year since they've transitioned, and hopefully college game day will continue to be just as good past Lee Corso. I don't know if we want to talk about what the potential last game may be uh,
We'll
yet,
get in
but
there. We'll get
okay.
there. Yeah, we'll get there in a second. But let's transition a little bit over, and for you, there's the picture of him donning the gator head there with holding an albino gator. Um, I'll say this, like he to me kind of Lee Corso is the last of that 90s innocence ESPN, where boom shakalaka, cool as the other side of the pillow, the catchphrase era, right? And he kind of personified that to the college level in a playful, joyful way. And he could actually pick against your team or jab against your team, and you still had this affinity for him because he came across as such as this playful, joyful grandfather type of guy. And I think that that kind of innocence is really lost today at times, and it's gonna be sad to see that go. As far as Lee Corso, you mentioned Florida State. So he did play football at Florida State. Interesting fact, I was reading on him today, Daniel. I did not know this. His roommate in college was the actor Burt Reynolds.
Yep.
That's wild to me. That is crazy. Of course, he went on to be a college football coach. He coached. He was the head coach for Louisville and Indiana and Northern Illinois, and then he had a short stint in the UFFL, I believe it was, and finished with a USFL. Sorry, finished with a college record of 73 wins, 85 losses, and six ties, which is actually pretty impressive when you coach at Indiana. Not gonna lie. So he was, I would say, the most beloved Indiana coach until Coach Sig showed up this year and took the Hoosiers all the way to the college football playoff. So Lee Corso kind of was a Big Ten guy for the most part when you look at it from that aspect of things as a coach. And then he transitions into the broadcasting booth with ESPN in 1987, and then he was helped start College Game Day in 1993. His catchphrase, "We can't go without mentioning not so fast, my friend." That was I still use. I think all of us use that when we
Yep.
disagree with somebody. Not so fast, my friend. So it's gonna be sad to see that go. And of course, famously started donning the headgear when it came to the game of the week, and he would pick a winner. Interestingly enough, as a Buckeye fan, the first headgear he actually donned was October 5th, 1996, Ohio State against Penn State, when he put on the Brutus head. And so in poetic fashion, apropos, Daniel, he's gonna finish his career game one at Columbus, Ohio, Ohio State, Texas. I'm pretty sure he's going to be putting this headgear on one more time and waving to the crowd like he always does. I think literally that's why he hasn't retired yet. They're going to do this, and that's how he's going to go out. He's going to go full circle here. Your thoughts on all that, Daniel?
Oh, definitely. I actually got to meet him and hear him speak a few years ago here in the Orlando area. And he actually, I believe, had some Indiana players that live in the area show up to hear him speak. So that was kind of cool. He didn't realize that they were in the audience. And then afterwards, they're like, hey, Coach Corso. He's like, oh, wow. But with that said, yeah, I think more than likely, I think that Ohio State game is the game that they're going to have the last one at. Although, seeing that he is a resident of Florida, I do think there's an outside chance he ends up at his home school of Florida State, his alma mater with Alabama. I think there's an outside chance of that. Which was also the first location for the traveling college game day. So either way, you've got a full circle moment. I do think more than likely it is going to be up there with you guys. However, I we've seen college game day do some stuff unexpected before, and I could see both for the ease of his travel and just get him to the alma mater one more time. I could potentially see that sneaking in, but like we've talked about, cultural phenomenon and this headgear being a big part of that, whether it's the Brutus head holding a gator, like you said, or heck, UCF a few years ago dressing up as the night as Nitro, and that just being living here in Orlando or in the Orlando area, knowing what a uh, big big moment that was for UCF. Um, that could have been done by anyone else. So I'm excited to see what this last episode will hold, but I definitely think one thing that will not be held back is the tears of everybody watching it, because I mean, you're witnessing the last stand of, like you said, the probably the last ESPN innocence going. So it'll be definitely a cultural event, and I can bet you if you look at the ratings that day compared to SEC Nation or Big Noon, not Big Noon Kickoff, over there on Fox, the pregame show, or wherever, I guarantee you it's going to be the most out of whack numbers they've seen in years, and rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you a few questions here before we transition and finish up by talking about your Gators for 2025. Do you think they will retire the headgear and no one else will do it, or do you think they will try to force this on Nick Saban, or does Pat McAfee say, "I'll do it"? Like, what do you foresee them trying to do week 2 here after Corso says goodbye?
Oh, that's gonna be hard. I could see McAfee stepping in and be like, "I'll do it," but like I said, it just doesn't seem right. Like the charisma is a different type of charisma, and I don't mind McAfee, but it would almost seem forced if he did it, and almost like, okay, you're trying to steal someone's thing. However, for a comedic purpose, if Nick Saban were to do something like that, or as a tribute, it's just so out of the Nick Saban we know that
Yes.
I would almost dig it for that reason. Kind of like some of these commercials we've seen. Yeah, what is it?
The Aflac
Aflac,
commercials.
yes, the Aflac commercials where it's like, okay, this is a different kind of cat than we're used to. So that I think if it were natural, because they've got to do something for their picks. I don't see them going from one giant pick section where there's something epic going on that people are going to talk about through the day to, oh, we're all just going to sit here and say, hey, Ohio State over Texas. Yeah, I think there's got to be something. What that'll end up being, I don't know, but I would love for it to be something interesting with Saban.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Daniel, let's talk Florida Gators here real fast, man. Give me kind of your where you're at in your headspace heading into the season for Florida. Seems to be quite a bit of buzz that this team's going to be pretty decent this year. What's your expectations?
My, oh man, I might get in some hot water here, but that's all right. Whether that's from Gator fans or rival fans or whatnot, this is a team that I expect should be able to compete for the SEC roster wise. And what I mean by that, you've got offensive line starters who are seniors. Some are in years 5 and 6, and some that have had 4 years of starting. So, starting with that offensive line, you've got a really experienced group. You've got a returning running back in Jaden Baugh, who is one of the best true freshman running backs last year in the SEC. You've got talented wide receivers, including bringing in three of, I think, the top 15 receivers in last year's recruiting class overall, and you've had other ones you've been stacking up. You've got everything on offense you could ask for with DJ Lagway, who could end up being a maybe not this year, but has the ceiling of being a Heisman Trophy quarterback. A lot is made last year about his touchdown interception ratio. Part of that is just when he's thrown in as a true freshman against some of the teams he did. Some of that is just stuff you learn on the fly as a true freshman. I don't expect a true freshman to come on the field and automatically be killing stuff, but he also put up highlights that you don't see many quarterbacks making. So the mixed bag you expect, but I expect a next step. Our defense, we had many guys return who got tons of experience. We got starters at safety who are now juniors who started their true freshman year 2 years ago, and they've been building up. We've got Tyreek Sapp leading a defensive line that last year in the last 4 or 5 games of the season led the nation in sacks. Didn't do so well in the front off of the season, and we started off terrible. So if they can build on that momentum that they had at the back end, this is a team that should be able to compete with the majority, if not the entirety schedule. Doesn't mean I'm predicting 12 and 0 or anything, but this is a team that for Billy Napier's 3 years has been blown out at least 2 times a season, and that can't happen this year. There's a big question about, is Billy Napier the guy? And this year, a lot of fans, and I would agree with them, say the talent's here. The only thing keeping you from the playoffs is coaching, bar none. Last year we were looking at 5-7 season, and he had a third straight losing season. And Scott Strickland, our AD, puts out he'll be back next year. And of course, Florida somehow pulls off the wins against LSU and Ole Miss in back-to-back weeks, end up with an 8-5 record. Things look much better going into the season. So you're hoping the team takes the next step. The question is Billy Napier not hiring a play caller. He's a guy who's never quite called an elite offense. His passing offense average is in the high 50s as a play caller throughout his career. And for Florida, that's been known, since the Lee Corso 90s days as a team that puts up tons of offensive points and through the air. It's kind of like, okay, what are we seeing? So that's the one thing is, are we going to see things like we saw Tennessee last year where it's 4th and 1, let's run a jet sweep, and it gets stopped. Josh Pate had a great commentary of that game specifically. When I kept watching the game and I knew what the score was at halftime. I keep thinking, how's Florida not going to score on this drive? And that's sometimes how the Billy Napier era has felt at Florida. So it'll be curious this year. We've got all the talent in the world. We've got all the experience in the world. You're not going to find a team that has, as much experience as this too often. So the question is, if you can't win now, when can you win in year 4, Billy Napier? So going into it, I'm going to try and look positively with a floor of 9-3. There are a lot of people, if you see another 4, 5, 6 loss regular season, that it's time to change. And that's a long discussion for another time, but just trying to give you the somewhat brief synopsis. That's how we're feeling going into the 2025 football season.
I had Michael on last week, and he's concerned. He actually chalked up the Tennessee Florida game as a loss for them on the schedule, and that told me everything I needed to know. I think Florida, is really a competitor this year and has a chance to knock on the door of the college football playoff. And of course, everybody in the SEC will say that the SEC's competitiveness is a disadvantage in a 12-team playoff. They got, what was it, three in last year, and so if they get three in again this year, is Florida going to be one of those three? I think they got a shot. I think the SEC is probably going to get four in this year. And how I look at it, I don't think the ACC is going to get two again. I just don't, unless there's two 11 and a 12 and 0 and 11 and 1 type of
Right.
season from two ACC teams, where where it's like, okay, there are obviously two really good ones
Yeah.
here. I just don't see them putting in like an SMU type of team again. And the same can be said of the Big 12. So where they're probably only going to get one. And so if you're only going to get one from the Big 12, you're only going to get one from the ACC or two at most, one power or the group of five school. I think that opens the door for four SEC teams, and if that's the case, I'm leaning that Florida gets in.
Yeah. We just got to take care of business, which has been unfortunately the problem that we've seen. I mean, last year, I'd have to go back and look at the record, but regular season 2-5 against teams with a winning record, and that was actually a good year. 3-5 if you count the bowl game with Tulane having a guy in the transfer portal play quarterback. So we'll see. We'll see. But
Hey
I
man,
do think
take
there's
them
a
where
shot.
you can get them, Daniel.
Oh yeah.
Come on, brother.
Oh, I will. But I also have to. I'm unfortunately looking to way too many different stats of like, all right, here's where we are. Oh, here's what we are against good teams. That's why I'm saying I could get in trouble with the Gator fans out there listening to this because there's a lot of Gator fans don't say anything that's even borderline negative, and it's like I'll just state a fact: we've never under Billy Napier beaten a team with a winning record on the road. We've had several shots, haven't done it. Um, we'll see if he can do that. We have early opportunities. Week 3 at LSU. Week 4 against Miami. After what Miami did in week 1 against us last year, there's zero reason after they've had the turnover they've had for us to lose that game. And that's probably the big one. Death Valley is of course a problem. Might be a night game. I think there's several big games scheduled that weekend. Actually, I've got the SEC schedule off right here. I think it's Georgia, Tennessee is also that weekend. So we'll see what gets the night game. And of course, Texas A&M has Notre Dame as well, which is always
Ooh,
one of those fun things. Now with the new SEC schedule, it
man,
used to be, uh, you know, 3:30 was the number one pick for TV slots, but
right.
now we've got ABC and it's a night game. Hey, that's also a new thing for Gator fans getting used to. Of hey, we've got a great game. What time's our slot? Oh, okay, let's do it.
Great,
But
great.
all sorts of
Well,
fun.
catch Daniel over at the Gator Truth podcast. You can look him up on YouTube. The other place you can find him, go to thecollegehuddle.com. Go over to the SEC section, scroll down to Florida. You'll find his College Huddle page there with all the links to all his social media, as well as to where you can find him on YouTube and podcasts, etc. Thank you for joining me, Daniel. I appreciate it, man.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It's been a good time, Eric, and we'll get together soon.
Sounds good, guys. Till next time, not so fast, my friend.